Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Hey everybody, it's Simone Morris, host of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I thought I'd do something a little different this week, and I think it's stemming from the fact that I'm just coming off of the Indie Authors Day at the local library, where I got a chance to read from my book. And I want to tell you that the reception was so amazing that I thought, why not come to my podcast listeners and let them hear a bit about where I was when the Power of Owning Your Career movement came into being. So without further ado, I want to read you just the introduction from the book, The Power of Owning Your Career. And essentially, this is what I read and talked about in the Indie Authors Day yesterday, as a matter of fact, at the Norwalk Library. So here goes. The power of owning your career is a concept that really resonated with me in my last year as an employee in corporate America. I had worked at a company for a few years, shy of 2 decades. It was a pretty good run. I had great pay and benefits and great people to work with, but something was missing. This job allowed me opportunities to travel the world with and without the company. It allowed me to have friendships that felt more like being a part of a family. In essence, I was comfortable and complacent. Truth be told, I knew that it was time to leave, but I was scared to leave home, so to speak. It was like that feeling you get when you are going off to college and you are scared to leave the comforts you're accustomed to. I wondered what had happened to that brave girl who used to job hop in her younger years to find the best opportunities. Somehow I had lost her along the way. I had grown up and I was remembering and living lessons my mother instilled in me about being a responsible adult. I had achieved the proverbial stability with a good job. And that's where the story should end, right? At least that's the story I sold to myself. I sought stability to ensure that I had the lifestyle that I desired. And I had a pretty good one that I didn't want to jeopardize. God surely knew that I wasn't following his plan. And so he put some pretty big signs in my way to stop the clock and to allow myself the time to think about what's next. I took an unpaid sabbatical from work. I should mention that it came about because I was on the verge of quitting my job. I needed a shakeup, and I had a sit down with a human resource business partner, and she wanted to know what was going on with me. Internally, I screamed, I'm going no place in this company. I'm unhappy, but I have a good job. I have to stay. Where am I going to find another good job like this one? But of course, I did not say any of those things. Instead, I asked for a timeout, and by God, I was granted it. So for those of you who don't know, a sabbatical is a period of time when an employee takes a leave of absence from their job. In some instances, these are paid leaves, but in this particular instance, it was an unpaid leave. And this can be a scary thing to do, but at the time I was single and so I had a lot more flexibility in making this decision. In my opinion, sabbaticals breathe life into the weary. It gives you the time to say, what the heck am I doing here? It allows you time to slow down and smell the roses again. It was something I desperately needed to do. Some folks thought I was on an extended vacation, while others thought, that chick is crazy. But you know what? I continued. I had to begin the process of filling my tank back up. Somehow, my fuel gauge was sticking on an extended empty, and it hadn't been repaired in quite some time. My 3 month sabbatical allowed me time to reevaluate whether I could continue on this path being the corporate path. The time off was refreshing, renewing, and rejuvenating. My eyes were open to the fact that I must have been put on the earth for a divine purpose, and try as I might to shrink back from the responsibility, I would never be at ease until I stepped into my greatness. Here are some things to think about, really some telling signs that you need to reevaluate your career. When you dread getting up in the morning for work and you live for Fridays and holidays just to have a reprieve, when you know you're not valued or seen as a high potential employee, yet you stay around hoping to enlighten others, when you are uneasy but unwilling to rock the boat, when you accept zero to minimal responsibility for your career challenges, these are some telling signs that you're not in the driver's seat for your career. And for me, it was while I was on a sabbatical that I decided to invest in a coach to help me sort of sort out the madness. I had to get clear on what was right for Simone. Frankly, I wasn't sure the technical world was my be all and end all. I had invested many years on that journey and I was at a turning point. I felt strongly that I was called to do more, so I decided to be a life coach. And I had been giving people sage advice for many, many years without the formal training. Anyone undertaking the intensive training required to be a coach knows you get a magnifying glass out and you start looking at your life close up so you can better understand yourself and really be impactful in coaching others. It was a life-changing, freeing experience. Before long, my sabbatical was ending and I was asked to return to work earlier than planned. Things were moving along nicely. However, it wasn't long before I found myself yearning for more again. The message to me was simple: God doesn't let up until you listen. So that's what I read yesterday at the Indie Authors Day. And I had a conversation with the audience just about feeling stuck or stalled or unhappy about where you are in your career and not really being sure of what to do. And that's really the message that I have written about in the Power of Owning Your Career book. And that's really what I want to empower and inspire and teach you on this podcast. I want to give you courage so that if you're in a situation where you're feeling just lost, disillusioned, and unhappy, I want the book and I want the podcast and I want the wisdom from the people that come on the show and the wisdom from my journey. I want that to help you get to a better place, get to a happy place in your career, essentially get to the driver's seat. So that's my inspirational teaching moment for you this week that I wanted to share with you before I release the next episode of the podcast. So take some time to really reflect on what I have said and read from the introduction in the Power of Owning Your Career book. If you don't have a copy, you can go onto my website, SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org, and go to the online shop and pick up a copy of the book. It is also available on Amazon if that's what you choose to do. But get yourself a copy and get familiar with what I'm talking about. What I have done is created a LinkedIn group for the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. And it is a discussion area where after each episode of the podcast, we can continue the conversation. So that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like for you to head over to LinkedIn and to look for the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group and to start engaging in conversation in that discussion group so that you can share your experiences and learn from others' experiences. And I'll be in there as well. And I've invited all the people that have been guests on the podcast to be a part of that group, because I really think it's a special community and a special movement that I am creating with the Power of Owning Your Career. I hope you've enjoyed this short teaching moment. The next episode of the podcast will be coming out later this week, but I did want to just check in and share this moment with you. Thank you so much for being a loyal listener to the podcast. If you haven't already done so, share it with a friend, and also give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're listening to the podcast. It's important because the more attention or feedback people see the podcast getting, the more they're going to tune in and the more the movement is going to spread and more people are going to get into the driver's seat for their careers. So again, thank you for being a loyal listener. I appreciate you. And if you're new, I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode on the SimoneMorris.com website, where you can find links to everything that was mentioned today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.